So here's a question that has to do with so-called genetic diseases. My younger brother has what we're told is 22q deletion syndrome or DeGeorge syndrome. Are you familiar with this, or what is your opinion on it? I'm basically not familiar with it. The only thing I would say is, so I really don't know much about this syndrome. But what I do know, and which I've repeatedly said, is that the DNA and the chromosomes are far less fixed than we think. They're far less fixed, and the products that they make are far less fixed than what we think. And there's a lot of lines of evidence that confirm this, which I don't want to get into right now, but the person who really pioneered this was Barbara McClintock. So and the reason I bring that up is because in any so-called genetic disease, you always see a kind of variable expression. So whether it's with cystic fibrosis, one cystic fibrosis person lives fairly normally into their 40s and 50s, and the next one has a horrible time and dies in their teens. And they seemingly have the same genetics or the same so-called genetic defect, which means that there are other things at work here. And those other things include, but not limited to, the expression of that gene. And as you know, I have serious questions about the whole central dogma and the whole dogma of genetics, because I think it's mostly materialistic nonsense. But on a practical level, what that means is we have more power to influence the expression of the gene, if even as that's what's happening, than we think. And how do you influence the expression of the gene? And maybe even the character of the gene. That's something that most doctors would say can't happen. My guess is it can happen, although I don't know that I have any proof of that. And I think that has to do with particularly a conception of how you see the disease. So for me, the first step is never again mentioning that you have a genetic disease, because that, I think, fixes in your mind and maybe in your child or family member's mind that they have this fixed problem which they can't do anything about. That's just the way you are. I don't think it's clear at all to me that that's in fact accurate. Once you get rid of the conception of that this is a fixed entity which you have no influence over, and you realize that you do have influence over, then, like always, it becomes a process of listening to what your body is trying to communicate to you. So it does that through symptoms. And then you hear the symptoms and you try to clear up the symptoms. And so whether it's fatigue or whatever the symptoms are, then you take a reasonable action to try to clear up those symptoms, see if it works. And if it does, that means you've influenced the course of your health. And then you just keep doing that. You keep unraveling. Your body will get used to talking to you and letting you know what is the problem that needs to be worked on now. And you can do that with a lot of different ways. You can do it with mental imagining. You can do it with Brown's gas. You can do it with homeopathic or herbal medicines. You can do it with changing your diet. You can do it with sunlight and earth exposure and being around kittens. You can do it in a lot of ways. Find one that resonates with you, works with you, and what you know is that it makes your life better. your symptoms are less, you feel better, and then you just go on. Because ultimately, what I tried to do was help people's lives get better. I wasn't treating DeGeorge syndrome, because I'm not sure if that's even a particularly valid way of looking at human health or illness. I treated the person who is asking me for help, and what was bothering them is their foot hurt. So if I could do something to make their foot not hurt, I was pretty confident that their life was better. And whatever their DeGeorge syndrome was, that's now better. Well, the syndrome might not be better, but the person is better. And I don't care anything about a syndrome. I only cared about the person. And then you just keep going one step after another until you get to the end of the road and they're fine.